Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Infusionsoft Support Trending Topic Tuesday webinar. I'm your host today, James Mefford, and today we're going to be digging into configuring your web form. And what we're going to be digging into a little bit with this today is after we get our base information, things we want to ask for on the web form, name, email, any sort of information we want on there, the look of it. What's next? We've got our thank you page, we've got some settings, and we've got a tab with code in it. And we're going to dig a little bit into that today. As I said, my name's James Mefford. I work in Infusionsoft support, so if you've ever called in, you've probably talked to me before. And yeah, we wanted to dig in today and talk about configuring a web form. The Infusionsoft Support Trending Topic Tuesday webinar is a place where we kind of take the calls that we have been getting, and we want to showcase some of the information that we've shared with people in a nice format to where, a lot of people could come look at it. We could share it with each other, and that's what the Trending Topic Tuesday webinar is about. So today we're going to dig into configuring a web form. And I'm going to go ahead and bounce over here to Infusionsoft. There we go. All right. So we've got our campaign here, and we've got a web form in here. Let's go ahead and click on into our web form here today. And like I said, I was going to kind of pick this up right after we got our information on here. So as you can see here, I just finished up the first step of making my web form, getting all my fields on there and kind of making it look the way I wanted. So what's next? Well, we're actually going to start with a thank you page first because as we all know, once we hit that submit button, we do have to go somewhere. We have to go somewhere. So I'm going to show you some options today that you do have with your thank you page. So these are the tabs we're going to be covering today: our thank you page, settings, and code. Let's go ahead and hit on our thank you page. Now with thank you page in Infusionsoft, you have a couple different options. And those options are, of course, the Infusionsoft thank you page that we can create, or web address. And I wanted to give a little tip about the thank you page. If you've logged into your system and you create web forms and you see this every time, in your admin branding center, down near the bottom, there's the default thank you page. And you can actually set this up so that you don't have to come in and change this. I'm sure most of you have done that. If you've worked with your coach, they've probably gotten you into the branding center there. But mine here is this is a test app. I do have this, but I still come across apps where I know people come in here and just swap this out every time. But there is an easier way, and it's in your branding center where you can set up all your defaults. And once we get to the thank you page here, we submit our web form. We are passed somewhere. So you do have the option with Infusionsoft to use a default thank you page here, creating one, changing anything you want. But a thank you page like this pretty much is just going to confirm what the customer just did. They gave us their information. We want to thank them. If they have something on the way, maybe in the email, we might want to let them know, check your inbox here in a few moments. And a possible link here, and of course a much different banner than the Great Company banner here. But this is a nice, quick way for you to set up a web form that will land people out somewhere when they submit their information, but maybe give them a quick link to head back to your website. And the other option I did mention is web address. This is pretty cool because this can be used for a number of different things. One, if we're having them fill out information, maybe you've built kind of a nice thank you page just hiding on your website somewhere, and you would like to drop people who fill this web form out right back onto your website. And at that point, you can actually put in a website URL here. And I'm not going to talk about this quite yet. So you can put a website URL in here, and this will allow you to, once they hit submit, redirect that customer anywhere you would like. Like I mentioned, there may be a thank you page on your website. If this is information about, registering for some sort of event, maybe they're buying tickets and we want to collect some information right up front, you could put an Infusionsoft like order form URL in here maybe so that they can proceed to check out and purchase tickets for your event maybe. I see that one quite a bit. I see that one quite a bit where, we do fill out some base information and we get put out because the information we were filling out was, of course, for, an event we may have coming up in your area. Now, passing the contacts information to the thank you page. This is one that we're going to touch on a little later in the webinar also, but I wanted to touch on it here just to kind of state some options you do have. If we are redirecting to a web address, and that web address happens to be maybe an Infusionsoft order form, something hosted by Infusionsoft, another web form or an order form, we could pass information over by ticking this little box, meaning if I'm leading to an order form and I just collected your first name and email, and I'm leading you to an Infusionsoft order form, if I have this redirect on after you hit submit, your first name and email are already going to be on that order form. That's a really cool thing and a nice convenient thing so they don't have to re-enter certain pieces of information. And if it was an order form, then I would just enter all the rest of the information, my billing address and credit card, and purchase tickets to the event. And passing information to another web form. Some of you have dabbled with two-step web forms, you know, where we collect first name and email on the first one, and then maybe have a few questions on the next one or even more in-depth information. That's another instance where this could work, is I could paste my second web form's URL right into this box and pass the information over so that on web form 2, the email address could populate. Now I get asked, what if they type over it? What if they misspell it? What if they change it on that one? What's going to happen? Well, if we're doing multi-step web forms, which is not really the topic we're talking about today, but I do like to add this one in here. If I'm passing information from one web form through the thank you page to the URL of the second web form, let's go ahead and remove this email field from now and just pretend this is the second page of the web form now. What I would do is I would grab a hidden snippet right from my field snippets here, and I would put that down in there. I would choose email, and I would leave the field value blank because the system is going to work with auto-populating this based on the setting we're talking about. And then I could add more information, company name, how did you hear about us? I could add all that information down here, and then just know when I submit, the settings we're going to get into later, the duplicate check on this web form is going to know who I am at that point because of my email address. All because I was passing information over. Now, if I'm just passing information over to my website, there's not going to be a lot of instances where if it's just a thank you page that's going to really benefit you unless you've written custom code into your website. But we will talk a little bit later about this setting, and if you are hosting web forms from Infusionsoft right on your website, embedding them on your website. We'll talk about how that can actually work for you if you're using the right code snippet. So, as we talked about here, you have your two options for a thank you page, and this is where your customer ends up right after they submit your web form. We have our main thank you page, and then, of course, we can redirect them anywhere we would like with web address and just putting a URL right in here. Very good. Well, let's dig into the settings tab a little bit. Like I said, we'll be back in this thank you page tab looking at this setting here in just a moment when we get to code. But let's go ahead and dig into settings here. Now, this is a tab that you may have looked over a few times. But what's great about this tab is there's a lot of default information set up in here. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy these out. There we go. All right. So the settings tab of the web form, we have a few options in here. Auto-populate form. Now, this is going to be a feature that you would use if you are emailing a form for people who are already in your database. This would be me creating a web form because maybe I want to get some more information or get people to sign up for some new initiative. But these would be people who are in my database already, and I would be emailing a link to this form through an email broadcast or a campaign email. And with this feature being ticked, every contact who receives my email from campaign or the broadcast email, when they click on the link, any information that I'm collecting on the form that I already have, like their first name or email, this would make that pre-populate on that form so that they don't have to enter it again. And that goes back to what I talked about a little earlier with the hidden fields that I showed you. You could very well use hidden fields, and we're going to talk about why email is the most important one. If you don't use, if you only want to pick one to use, make it email as your hidden field. If you're going through a process where you're going to have the auto-populate feature be available to you. Now, auto-populating the web form, that would allow us to, if we're sending it through broadcast or campaign email, that would allow us to have information go ahead and populate when my contact clicks on it. It's a nice, convenient time saver for them. And if you're using the hidden fields, it does eliminate a little bit of that factor of human error, so I don't have duplicate records in the system. Duplicate checking. Now, this gets back into what we were just talking about with the hidden email field, auto-populating emails, and why I said if you're going to do a process like that, using the email field will be your number one. By default, and I say that because if somebody's never really looked at this feature, you might say, oh, I have about 10 web forms out there. Do I need to check on them? By default, this is already running on all of your web forms. If you've never touched this setting, this is what it's going to do. Every time that the submit button is hit, the system by default is going to take the email address in the email field, and it's going to try to match it to an Infusionsoft contact record. If it can find a contact record that is in the system that has the same email, it will basically update the contact record, add this form submission to it. But let's say I'm a new person coming through. You've never heard of me before, but I got your information and came to your website, or came to your web form and filled out my information to give you. The system tries to check for that email address, and it can't find it. At that point, it is going to create a new contact record. Yeah. And there's other options in here for duplicate checking, and this is the one, like I said, on by default that I see the most. But I'll leave this open here. They're pretty base criteria. They all kind of boil down to email address a little bit. But as you can see there, it'll check by person's first or last name and email, first or last and email and company, or a cookie and first or last and email. Now, I don't see a lot of these used as much, but I have seen situations where people kind of use the database in a slightly different way, and they may actually have duplicate records in terms of email addresses in the system, but different names, but they share email addresses. That's where I have seen these things come along and be used, but not as much. By default, I see this. And the final option in there, I don't see this one used hardly ever at all. Don't check for duplicate records. That means no matter how many times I put the same information, same name and same email in this web form, if this option is on, that means every time I submit this form, you're going to have a new contact record in the system for me. So as you can see, that there may be a case for that sometimes, but that is very rare. So yeah, by default, check using the person's email address. This is the one that we see the most. And like I said, if you've never been in this tab before, but you've set up web forms, just know that's already running. Notification emails. These are kind of fun. These are a great way for you to kind of keep track of what's going on if you would like on specific web forms by sending you or someone on your team or multiple people, emails when this web form is filled out. And as you'll see, I cleared these out a moment ago. You can put an email address in here, or you can put multiple email addresses in here and separate them by commas. And that means every time this web form is filled out, the system is going to send an auto-generated email. There's no template settings on this, as it is meant for very internal use for you guys. But it'll send an email that will include all of the information that was captured on the web form, and I do believe the IP address of the form submission. And it will send it to you with whatever subject line you would like to put in here. Notification. A web form was filled out is the default, but you can change this. You can absolutely change this, but just know that every time that this web form is submitted, you could very well be notified. This comes in handy quite a bit when maybe you're taking, registrants for, people who will be attending an event or, coming by or interested in something. Sometimes I will see team members who have people who just kind of want to keep a running tally. I know the system's tracking everything for you if you have it set up correctly. But if we launch something over the weekend, I know sometimes there's people like, hey, I'd like to keep an eye on what's going on with that over the weekend. You can very well have notifications sent over. And, I do know people who just start with Infusionsoft like this feature also when they get their first web form out there. It is kind of fun to put a fun subject line on here and actually kind of start seeing things in action and see who's filling out your web form. But not useful every time. You may have a web form that's out there that gets a lot of business and a lot of traffic. Probably not ideal to have notifications on that, as you will probably overload your inbox with tons of notifications. But like I said, it is generated by the system, so it is recommended that this is only sent to people who are internal with you guys because there's no template settings on the email you will get with this notification setting. Yeah. All right. Well, let's dig into our code tab now. This is our final tab today, and we're going to bounce back to the thank you page here in a moment. I do want to go over the different options that we have in here. We're not going to talk too much about the social today. We will touch on it in just a moment, but we really want to start kind of right in the middle here. I'm going to start with the hosted versions, but then go back to the top. So let's go ahead and go down here to the hosted version. This is the most common thing that people ask for when they get their web form created is how do I get a URL to that web form so I can go ahead and share it, get it out there. And it's in my code tab. And it is the hosted versions here, and there's two URLs. Now, these URLs lead to the exact same place. The only main difference between these two URLs is one, as you can see here, has no editing options. And the second one here, I can edit the appendage at the very end if I would like. Yeah. Now, either one of these can be taken through your favorite URL shortener. If you have like a Google link shortener or a Bitly, you can actually present these to it and get a nice smaller, even smaller URL that you can share out there, and maybe looks a bit nicer for you. And I use the Google link shortener. But yeah, anytime I get a web form and I just want to share the link out with people, I can slap it in one of those and actually get a nice Google shortened link and share that out. So like I said, these lead to the exact same place, and they are literally just taking me to the hosted version of this web form so that it can easily be filled out and submitted. Perfect. Well, let's go ahead back over to here. And I want to talk about the code tab, as there are 3 types here. And I wanted to share with you a little information about the JavaScript one and some things that you can do with that. But I also want to share some things to look out for with the HTML code and some uses for the Unstyled. So the HTML code is the one that we see that people grab most common. And you may have done this, or you may have passed this on to your developer. But you grab your code, and with the HTML code, there's a lot of design code in there. As you see me scrolling through, you can see background colors. There's a lot of design code in there, because it's every aspect of what we've built right over here, of course. So the code for your web form updates after you publish. So once you get your initial design down and you publish this, you can come into here and grab your code, and you could embed this right onto your website. And the HTML code does come with all the design aspects of it and everything we've created, and it's easily embeddable right on your website. If you have developmental skills, or you have a developer who puts things onto your website, this code can be manipulated in certain ways to give you what you need in terms of design tweaks and things like that. The HTML code does need to be updated, though. If you come in and make design changes at any point in time, let's say we already got it on the website with the HTML, but we needed to change the background image, and we needed to change, maybe add some more information that we need to collect on the form. Once we publish this again, we republish, the code is going to update here. Meaning, if you're using the HTML code, you would need to take the fresh code and replace it on your website. Yeah. The HTML Unstyled code, we'll touch on that for a moment. This one's pretty basic. This is for if you have a developer who kind of wants to build the look of the form from scratch outside of Infusionsoft. So the Unstyled code comes with a lot of functionality code. As you can see in here, our hosted version URL that we looked at a moment ago, it's hiding in here. And then we have our form name. We can actually see the fields that we were collecting on here, our name and email. This is functioning code that, you know, a web designer can actually add design to. You can take this code and, you know, putting some custom coding in there, you can get one of those web forms to where everything's side by side, like first name, email, submit. You can do a lot of very interesting things with this, because we're just presenting you the function code, the code that lets the form function itself. There's none of the design aspect that we've created tied to this code. So we do want to provide that as an option. This is a very raw code that you can do amazing things with. HTML, as I said, like that. This code is in there, but there is a lot of design code too, because it has all the aspects of our design. Now the JavaScript snippet. This is one here that for a long time, I know, like WordPress, it was kind of hard to use this, but I've seen a lot of advancements in the themes that they have now that are playing a lot more friendly with JavaScript. And the JavaScript snippet actually works on my site, and I got that per recommendation of, I don't know if you guys have seen the basic training webinars, but Judy Miller, who does the basic training webinars, she actually got this on her website really nice, and she's like, go ahead and give it a try. Like they've updated a lot of things in terms of the themes that we use on our websites to play a little more friendly with JavaScript, so I don't have weird borders and things like that all the time. But the JavaScript snippet is really cool for a couple reasons. If you get this on your site, you can add more JavaScript to here to kind of change any sort of border you may see. But on my site, it blended right in. And what's cool about the JavaScript snippet is if I put this on my website, and then I decide we need to do a major overhaul on the look and feel of this form and, you know, add different information into here, after I republish, if I'm using the JavaScript snippet on my website, I don't have to replace the code. Because as you see here, this is pretty basic again, and I keep referencing. There's our hosted version again. In the JavaScript snippet, it's in there. because all this is doing is it's basically pulling the hosted version at all times. So I have my website loaded up, and there's this little window in there that I've put in with this JavaScript snippet that loads the hosted version of the web form in, meaning if I've made design changes, unlike the HTML, if I'm using JavaScript snippet right here on my website, I don't need to come in here, copy this, and replace it on my website. As long as I've published this form in here in Infusionsoft, this is going to see the updated version because it's just like the hosted version, except embedded right into my website. Pretty cool. And the JavaScript snippet also allows for passing information, as we were talking about a little while ago, passing contact information. If I'm doing the multi-step web form thing I'm talking about, and I really want that second web form to just be right on my website, HTML would cause me a lot of issues. I would have to do a lot of custom coding on my website myself. But if I put the JavaScript snippet on my website, and I want to do a multi-step web form, and I have my second web form on there with JavaScript, I could pass information. And what's also great is we were talking about this too. If I'm sending people a link to a form that are already in my Infusionsoft, and I send out a broadcast email, if I tell this form to auto-populate, and I put the JavaScript snippet right on my website, I can actually send them the link to my website that that form lives on, and their information will auto-populate. That's pretty cool because we're using the JavaScript, which is one of the custom codes that you can use. You could write your own PHP. It would take a while possibly unless you're really natured in PHP. But yeah, the JavaScript snippet does open some abilities for that so that I could technically, instead of redirecting people to a hosted version, I could put that on my site. I could keep people around my website and still have those features to auto-populate. Those are, yeah, like I said, a little kind of, the next step. I mean, if you've gotten your web form out there, you may have looked into these ideas and things like that. But yeah, the JavaScript snippet, definitely something that, I would suggest trying it out on your site. Maybe not on the main page, but see how it looks on there, because you may need to add, and you can find on all the code snippet websites that are out there. Just Google, JavaScript snippet, code snippets, and you can actually get some things to add to this on your own. If it doesn't look exactly quite like you want it to embed on your website, the end is not there. But like I said, a lot of themes out there, especially WordPress themes, are updating in a way over the past year or so to where they do play a little more friendly with JavaScript snippets, and they don't look like the JavaScript snippet was just forced in there. So yeah, these are a lot of really cool things that you can do, options that you have in terms of putting this web form right onto your website. We only have a couple more things that we really want to share with you here today. I want to share the having your webmaster do it. This falls in line with what we were just looking at here. If we have our webmaster do it, this is a nice convenient way that we can have the system just batch out a general email to my webmaster, and it will deliver him 2 versions of the code we just looked at so that he can try and see which one works best. The JavaScript and the HTML, all from have your webmaster do it. We choose who it's coming from. We put our webmaster's email in here. And we type a message. All right. So it's pretty basic here. It just has me choose who it's from, my webmaster's email, and I can send my webmaster an email with some direction on, here's some code and here's where I want it. And I can send that email, and it'll send him this email, and he'll have the 2 versions here to attach. So it's nice and convenient, and I just saw my email. I don't mind the HTML on there. I'm not really looking for auto-populating features, but I did, just state in the email, like I sent 2 versions. See if you can get that JavaScript one on there. Yeah, and we can send that right over, right out of the web form here, and it's just going to take these 2 pieces of code. It's going to pack them up real nice and send them over in an email right to my webmaster. Very cool. Yeah. All from there. And sharing with your network, this is very similar to the hosted version. Like I said, we weren't going to talk too much about this today, but this does give you the option to share socially. But I don't I'm no strategist or anything, but I don't recommend this way when I'm sharing things to my social. I like to take links there. I like to actually go compose those things. Not necessarily going to all my social medias. But like if you do multiple social medias out there, you may have something like a Hootsuite or a mass media social media poster, or you may go to the individual sites yourself. But I like going to an actual social media editor, whether it's Facebook itself or my Hootsuite, and actually posting myself and having full control over what I'm posting on social media. This is just a very quick way for you to basically type in a message and get a blast out there. But like I said, I do recommend taking your URL, shortening it, and then actually going to your mass media poster or the individual social media site you want to post on and creating the post there, because you do have more control. Like if you wanted to add a photo to it or change the description, you do have that control, and that's what I would recommend. But we do offer this as a very kind of limited way to go ahead and share socially out there with your base social media networks. But yeah, like I said, I mean, you have a lot more control when you have, a multi-social media poster, or go right to the source, right to the Twitter and right to the Facebook, and actually post straight from there. So yeah, that's kind of just what I recommend. But I did want to say in there as we kind of ended off today that this is an option for you. So yeah. So like I said, today's webinar, not too long, just some very basic things here. We didn't have a lot of content to cover today, but we did want to share these tabs here because, yeah, we don't want to ever get in a situation. I know called in before, and it's not that, you may sometimes forget, but if you haven't set your defaults and you get a web form going and you think you're all done and you test it and, oh, great company, my defaults from Infusionsoft are in there. It's always good to come through and actually dig through and dig into these tabs. And this is a tab that I get questions on from time to time because it's not one a lot of people visit, because we do have some defaults set up in here. And if you test web forms before even getting into the settings tab and they work the way you want, a lot of people, some people may never even pop in here, but maybe once ever. And yeah, we just kind of wanted to show off some things. And that's the point of the Trending Topic Tuesday webinar, is kind of taking things that we get questions on in our tech support department and kind of sharing them in a way that we can get this information out to you guys in kind of a group format. And what's great about that is you can share these and you can have other team members who may be working with you on Infusionsoft kind of watch these things also. So we're going to be doing this every Tuesday. We've got a lot of great topics in line for you coming up over the next few weeks. We're going to be taking your guys' input also coming up soon, so stick around for that. And also very, very soon, we're going to be announcing the archive of these. That's right. You're going to be able to watch these on demand. And as we talked about earlier, maybe you have other people on your team. Maybe you've been in with Infusionsoft for years, but you've got some newer people on the team and you'd like to give them some resources. We're going to have those available for you here really soon. So stick around for that. We're going to have the archives up. But yeah, we really enjoy doing this webinar for you guys, and we hope you like it. So definitely come around and share it with your friends, and we're going to be taking your guys' input to see all the different things you'd like to see us do on here on the Trending Topic Tuesday webinar. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. My name is James Mefford, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.